So let's take a look at what the difference is between these different types of cooking methods, most of which you are familiar with. You just might not know exactly how they are different or which category they actually fall into. So we have three main categories of cooking. We have the moist heat method and all the cooking methods that fall into that. We have the dry heat without fat method, and then we have the dry heat with fat. So these are the three main categories, and then we have different types of methods that go into those categories. So here are moist heat methods. We have poach, we have simmer, we have boil, blanch, steam, and braise. Now, they are different, even though they all fall into the moist heat methods. But basically what this means is that there is some sort of liquid that we introduce other than fat to the preparation, to the cooking, to the heat transfer methods that are utilized to conduct heat, to transfer heat, right? So this is where we look at that: poaching, simmering, boiling, blanching, steaming, and braising. Some of you might look at these and you're like, well, how is braising different than simmering? And isn't simmering the same as saute? And the big answer is no, it's not. And I definitely want you guys to look in your book. Your book does an incredible job going over each of these different definitions. So please take a look at that, because you're going to need to know that for the quiz and also for your exam, which is coming up. So these are your moist heat methods. Here are your dry heat methods without fat. So this means that this is completely dry heat, no fat, no liquid involved: roasting, baking, broiling, grilling, and griddling. Some of you might look at this and you're like, wait, no, hold on. There's some level of, fat or something that we introduce to this. And the answer is no, we actually don't. Now, there might be moisture that comes out as a result of the cooking, but it's not something that we need in order to conduct and to transfer the heat from the heat source to the actual item. We might also be introduced something to moisten the actual product, but what I mean by that is actually not to cook it, but also to enhance the flavor of it. So those are our differences. Pan broiling is another one. It's not pan frying, it's pan broiling. Here are your dry heat with fat methods. So we have saute, pan fry, and deep fry. And with these ones, so once again, saute is not the same as simmering and as braising. Saute literally in French means to jump. So when you saute something, you do put some sort of fat, and then very quickly, jump, jump, jump. That's what you're kind of thinking. That's how we prepare an item, but you do need some sort of fat. Definitely for pan fry, definitely for deep fry, we are utilizing, whether it's oil, vegetable oil, or old school lard, whatever you want to do to basically transfer the heat from the source to the item, you would be using one of these methods. So let's look at building flavor profiles. This is something that definitely gets better with the more cooking experience that you have. The biggest rule that I use is you only use any type of seasoning to enhance the flavor of the primary item that you're cooking. So if you are cooking a steak, your seasoning should help bring out the major or the primary flavor of the steak. It should not overpower it. Absolutely not. Now, there might be some supporting flavors that we're trying to introduce, but once again, we don't want to overpower the original flavor. So if it's the steak, we might be adding some sort of smokiness to it, or maybe even a little like Cajun spice, but that should not overpower the actual, steak should taste like meat. So the meat flavor has to be the primary. Every ingredient should have a purpose. Ingredients can harmonize, they can contrast. So something like sweet and sour, or acid, acidic, and kind of more mellow, more neutral. So it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to. Now, unless you're pregnant, probably the top two don't really make sense, and that's a good thing. Yeah, when you're looking at something acidic, something creamy, sweet, it might just not always be the best idea to try to do this. Always reminds me of I had a friend in college, and she did not know how to cook. And one time I get there and I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I try to cook chicken breast. And I was like, oh, what were you doing? And she's like, oh, I was cooking it in vinegar. And I was like, you mean like you made a marinade? And she was like, no, I just have vinegar and then I put a chicken breast in it. She's like, I thought it'd be good, but it wasn't. I'm like, well, yeah, because those flavors don't really work well together. And it was actually disgusting because the vinegar overpowers anything else, especially in large quantities. She was not the best of cooks. Definitely not. All right, so other things we need to consider is other elements on the plate. So whatever else is on the plate as an accompaniment. And obviously the biggest thing that we use to create these flavor profiles and enhance the profile is seasoning. Now, the use of seasoning, and I encourage all of you guys to try seasoning. It's, if you read about turmeric, what is turmeric? How can I utilize it? Let me try it. Seasoning is magical. It can do completely different things, and don't be afraid of it. It's really what separates home cooks from kind of these. I'm not going to say chefs because you need to go to culinary school, but it's something a little bit of a higher level. So the art of seasoning and flavoring, why is it an art? Because it definitely takes some judgment. So let's take a look at how we actually can use seasoning. So once again, we use seasoning to enhance the flavor of food without changing it. So when we use salt, the idea of using salt is not to make something salty and to make it taste like salt. No, the salt is supposed to increase the flavor of the actual ingredient. There's probably half of you guys that when you eat a tomato raw, if you do that, half of you might put sugar on it, half of you put salt on it. And you can actually taste test this, and the tomato will taste completely different based on which seasoning you actually use. So it's something that you might want to try. It's like a little food experiment. The other one is if you take watermelon, and watermelon actually is amazing if you put salt on it. It actually becomes more sweet whenever you put salt on it. Actually, it's also really good if you put vinegar on it, but not in the same quantities as my friend when she was trying to cook chicken in it. But it's actually excellent. So let's talk about flavoring. So anytime we flavor something, that's adding a new flavor to food. In the picture, you see some nutmeg, and nutmeg's an amazing, amazing seasoning used in moderation. So it's another seasoning that you want to make sure that when you start using nutmeg, only get small amounts. You can't go back from nutmeg. All right, so basic rules. Obviously, main ingredients are the main source. Badly prepared foods cannot be rescued with the last minute of addition of any type of seasoning. Number one thing, you burn something, it's gone. Don't try to mask burnt with salt, sugar, pepper, paprika. It won't work. If you burn something, it's dead. Throw it away. Start over. The function of herbs and spices to heighten and give extra interest to the natural flavors. That is something that will come with time, with practice. Don't be afraid of it. All right, so let's take a look at herbs. So herbs, and you guys had great practice in your lab looking at this. So herbs are basically the leaves of certain plants. Now, we say some are used as herbs, meaning to enhance the flavor, but some can actually be used as ingredients themselves. Arugula, for example. We actually have now come to use that not only as an herb, but we actually use it as a main ingredient in salads or whatever that may be. Rosemary, dill, tarragon, and these are all amazing herbs, and when you use them in cooking, you're always using the leaves. Now, if you're using anything other than the leaves, such as the buds, the fruits, the flowers, the bark, the seeds, roots, whatever it may be, of plants and trees, now you are using what we call spices. So that's the main difference between spices and herbs. All right, so why don't you guys make sure that you read the chapter 6, which is associated with these two online lectures. Also take a look at all of the other things that are due this week. And thank you so much for paying attention. Have a great week.